The air in the courtroom was thick, heavy with unspoken accusations and the quiet hum of the ventilation system. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a man whose face usually looked like it was carved from granite, gave me a subtle nod. Across the aisle, Sarah, my soon-to-be ex-wife, sat poised and confident. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her expensive suit impeccable. She looked every inch the wronged woman, the victim who deserved every penny of the alimony she was demanding. Next to her, her shark of a lawyer, Mr. Thorne, wore a smug expression, as if victory was already theirs. My hands were clammy, gripping the tablet I held. This was it. This was everything. My future, my peace of mind, all hung on this moment. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and addressed the judge. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I understand my wife has presented a compelling case for spousal support, claiming financial hardship and emotional distress due to our separation. However, I believe this evidence will paint a very different picture of her true intentions." Mr. Thorne immediately shot up. "Objection, Your Honor. My client's character is not on trial here. This is a simple dissolution of marriage case, focusing on financial equity." The judge, a stern woman with a sharp gaze, raised a hand. "Mr. Thorne, I will allow Mr. Davies to present his evidence." "Mr. Davies, please proceed." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes, usually so expressive, were now narrow slits of suspicion. That smug look on her face had flickered. Just for a second, I pressed play on the tab. The screen lit up, showing a dimly lit room, the decor unmistakably luxurious. A champagne bottle, half empty, sat on a polished table. Then Sarah's face filled the screen, laughing. She wasn't alone. A man, well-dressed, with a familiar smarmy smile I couldn't quite place, was beside her, his arm casually draped over her shoulder. They were clinking glasses. Sarah's voice, clear as a bell, filled the silent courtroom. "He won't know what hit him," she said, the tone dripping with contempt. "Alimony will drain him dry, then we'll be set. This idiot still thinks I love him. What a fool." The man beside her chuckled, a low guttural sound. Sarah took a sip of her champagne, her eyes sparkling with malicious glee. "Just a few more weeks of playing the heartbroken victim and then we're free, and rich." The words hung in the air, a devastating blow. The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees. Sarah's face, which had been contorted in shock, now registered pure, unadulterated panic. Her lawyer, Mr. Thorne, looked like he'd just seen a ghost. The judge leaned forward, her expression unreadable, but her eyes were fixed on the screen, on Sarah's smiling, calculating face. The silence stretched, heavy and agonizing, broken only by the faint whir of the tablet. My heart was pounding, not with triumph, but with a profound, bone-deep sadness for what had been and what was now irrevocably lost. This was the moment I stopped being her husband and became her target. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the dream started to curdle. Sarah and I met in college, a whirlwind romance of late-night study sessions, cheap pizza, and endless conversations about our future. She was beautiful, smart, vibrant. I was captivated. We talked about everything: buying a little house with a big yard, painting the kids' rooms, growing old together. We were so full of hope, so certain we were destined for something special. Our wedding 10 years ago felt like the culmination of everything good in the world. For the first few years, it was exactly as we'd dreamed. We worked hard, side by side. I was climbing the ladder at my marketing firm, and Sarah was dabbling in freelance graphic design. We supported each other through career setbacks and celebrated every small victory. We scrimped and saved, making plans for a down payment on a house. Our nights were filled with laughter, shared stories, and that quiet comfort that comes from truly belonging to someone. Then things started to shift, subtly at first. My career took off faster than Sarah's. I was getting promotions, bigger paychecks. We bought our dream house, complete with a big yard. Sarah, who had never been truly passionate about graphic design, started to work less. She said she wanted to focus on making our house a home, on managing our household. I understood. We had more disposable income now, and she deserved to enjoy the fruits of our labor. But with more money came more desires. At first, it was a nicer handbag, then a weekend trip to a fancy resort. Soon, it escalated to designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and lavish vacations. I didn't mind providing for her, but I noticed a change in her focus. Our conversations drifted from shared dreams to plans for her next big purchase. She spent more time at the mall than at home. I tried to talk to her about it gently. Honey, do we really need another designer purse? We could put that money towards something else. She'd just shrug, a dismissive wave of her hand. Mark, we can afford it now. We deserve nice things. You work so hard, what's the point if we don't enjoy it? I'd let it go. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just being old-fashioned. But the feeling of a subtle disconnect, a growing chasm between us, began to form. Our evenings, once filled with easy conversation, became quieter. Sarah would be absorbed in her phone, scrolling through social media, or planning her next shopping trip. The warmth, the intimacy, the shared laughter that had defined our early years slowly began to fade. I tried to bring it back to reignite that spark, but she seemed preoccupied, distant. It felt like I was reaching for her, and she was always just out of reach. The glow of our beginning was slowly, imperceptibly dimming. I tried to ignore the feeling, to chalk it up to the stresses of adulthood. But deep down, a knot of unease began to tighten in my stomach. The distance between us became a gaping canyon. Sarah was physically present in our home, but emotionally, she was miles away. I'd come home from work, tired, but looking forward to seeing her, and find her absorbed in her phone, or already making plans to go out with friends. She developed a new social circle, people I barely knew, who seemed to thrive on superficiality and expensive outings. I'd try to join her sometimes, but I always felt like an outsider, like I didn't quite fit in with their polished world of endless brunch and designer label. Our house, once a sanctuary of shared life, started to feel like a fancy hotel, where I was just a paying guest. My attempts to initiate deeper conversations, to talk about our relationship, to ask what was going on with her, were met with either a blank stare or a dismissive laugh. "Mark, you are being dramatic," she'd say, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "We're fine, just busy, you know. Life gets hectic." But we weren't fine. We hadn't been intimate in months. Our financial arguments became more frequent and more heated. I was the sole provider now, and her spending was spiraling out of control. My paychecks, once generous enough to provide for our comfortable life, now felt like they were barely keeping pace with her demands. "We need to budget, Sarah," I'd say, spreading out the bills on the kitchen table. "We're spending more than we're bringing in," she'd scoff. "Oh, please, Mark. You are so stingy. We deserve this lifestyle. You work hard. What's the point of having money if we don't enjoy it?" She always had an excuse, a new justification for her extravagance. She started making veiled criticisms, too. My clothes weren't fashionable enough. My jokes weren't funny. My career wasn't progressing fast enough for her liking. Every word felt like a tiny cut, slowly bleeding me dry. I suggested marriage counseling. Maybe a third party could help us communicate, I pleaded, hoping to bridge the widening gap. She just looked at me with an expression of pure disdain. "Counseling? For what? Here is nothing wrong with me. Maybe you are the one who needs to lighten up." The idea of divorce, which I had suppressed for so long, started to loom large in my mind, a dark cloud on the horizon. But I still loved the woman I thought she was, the woman I married, and I desperately clung to the hope that we could find our way back to each other. I just didn't realize that the woman I loved was long gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone cold and demanding, a stranger in my own home. My heart ached constantly, a dull, persistent pain. The bombshell dropped on a Tuesday evening, just as I was getting home from work. I found Sarah sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, a detached expression on her face. The air in the room was heavy, almost suffocating. I knew something was coming. She put her phone down, slowly, deliberately. She didn't look at me. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any emotion, just like she was ordering coffee. The words still hit me like a physical blow, even though I had half expected them. My stomach dropped, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. It was over. The years, the dreams, the struggle, all dissolved into those 3 cold words. I just stood there staring at her, unable to process it. "Sarah," I finally managed, my voice a raw whisper. "Are you serious?" She finally looked up, her eyes empty. "Perfectly serious, Mark. I am not happy. This isn't what I want anymore." The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations and painful conversation. I still held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe we could separate, work things out. But Sarah was unyielding. She wanted out. And then came the paperwork, the formal demand for alimony, and that's when the real betrayal began to sink in. Her lawyer sent over the proposed settlement. I stared at the numbers, my vision blurring. She was asking for a huge monthly sum in alimony, so significant it would cripple me. Half of my retirement account, which I had painstakingly built up over 15 years. Half the equity in the house, even though I had paid for the majority of the down payment and all the mortgage payments while she spent lavishly. The luxury car she drove, which I had bought for her. Everything. "This is insane," I told Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, my voice trembling with disbelief. "She barely worked for years. I've been the sole provider. This is highway robbery." Mr. Henderson, usually so calm, looked grim. "Mark, in our state, spousal support can be substantial, especially in a long-term marriage. Where T here is a significant income disparity. She'll argue she gave up her career for the marriage, for your success. She'll claim emotional distress and a need for maintaining her current lifestyle. But her lifestyle is what's bankrupting us." I protested, running a hand through my hair. "I can't afford this. I'd have to sell the house, empty my savings, and still live paycheck to paycheck just to keep her comfortable." "It's often cheaper to pay, Mark," Mr. Henderson said, his voice softer now, almost empathetic. "Fighting it could cost you more in legal fees, and you might still end up paying." The words echoed in my head. "It's cheaper to pay. Cheaper to just lie down and let her take everything I'd worked for. Cheaper to let her ruin me financially, leaving me destitute, while she walked away with a fat check and a life of luxury." It wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was an ambush. Complete and utter betrayal of everything I thought our marriage was built upon. The woman I loved was not just leaving me. She was trying to destroy me. Pain of the separation was quickly being replaced by a burning, furious anger. The days after receiving Sarah's alimony demand were a living hell. A living hell. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind raced constantly, replaying conversations, calculating numbers, trying to find a way out of the financial quicksand she was dragging me into. I couldn't focus at work. My once meticulous reports were filled with errors. My presentations lacked their usual spark. My boss, sensing my distraction, gave me a subtle warning. I sat at my kitchen table night after night. A single lamp illuminating the stack of bills, the divorce papers, the terrifying alimony demand. If I agreed to it, I would have to sell the house, the home we had built together, the place that still held ghosts of happier memories. I would liquidate my entire savings, drain my retirement account, and still be struggling to make her monthly payments. I would be working myself to the bone for years, just to fund her new, comfortable life. The injustice of it all was a bitter pill I couldn't swallow. The anger turned into a cold, desperate hopelessness. I considered just giving up. Just signing the papers, accepting my fate, becoming financially ruined but at least finding some peace from the constant battle. But then I'd picture Sarah, her smug smile, her contemptuous tone from the video I hadn't seen yet, but could almost hear, and a defiant spark would ignite within me. I wouldn't let her do this. I wouldn't let her steal my future. One afternoon, a few weeks into this legal nightmare, I was picking up coffee near Sarah's favorite upscale boutique. I saw her inside, laughing too loudly, animatedly gesturing with her hands as she spoke on her phone. Couldn't hear what she was saying, but I caught snippets of her conversation as she walked past the open door. The plan. Easy money. He's such an idiot. The words hit me like a physical blow. Idiot. Easy money. The plan. It sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just a divorce, it wasn't just about her wanting out. This felt calculated, malicious. A seed of suspicion, small but persistent, began to sprout. What if there was more to this than just a standard divorce? What if she wasn't just leaving me, but actively trying to ruin me? The thought was terrifying, but also empowering. It gave me a direction, a desperate sliver of hope. I remembered an old college friend, Leo. He had left his corporate job years ago to become a private investigator. He was discreet, thorough, and had a reputation for getting results. The idea felt wrong, like I was crossing a line, invading her privacy. But she was trying to steal my entire life. Survival instinct kicked in. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed Leo's number. I had to know. I had to fight back. I called Leo that evening. He listened patiently as I spilled everything. The growing distance, the escalating demands, the crushing alimony claim, and finally, the overheard fragments about the plan and easy money. He was skeptical at first. Mark, people say things when they're angry. Divorce is messy. You might be grasping at straws. Maybe, I admitted, my voice tight with frustration. But my gut tells me here is something more. This isn't just about ending a marriage. This feels like a setup. He sighed. All right, tell you what. Let's start small. I can show you how to set up some basic, discreet surveillance. No private eyes following her around town just yet. If you find anything at all, then we talk next steps. The next day, I went to a specialty electronics store, feeling like a spy in a bad movie. I bought small, nearly invisible cameras, designed to look like everyday objects. A USB charger, a clock radio. The thought of installing them in my own home, the home I shared with my wife, made my stomach clench. It felt morally wrong. A profound invasion of privacy. But then I remembered Sarah's cold eyes, her contemptuous words, her lawyer's smug face, and the desperate fear of losing everything. Self-preservation won out. I waited until Sarah was out, then carefully placed the cameras. One in the living room, subtly tucked behind a bookshelf. Another in the kitchen, camouflaged in a plant pot. And finally one in my study. A room Sarah sometimes used for her phone calls, hidden in a fake smoke detector on the ceiling. My hands trembled as I connected them to my phone, testing the feeds. The images were clear, almost too clear. The first few days were agonizingly mundane. I spent hours watching the feeds, my eyes tired and strained. Sarah going about her day, watering plants, cooking, watching television. Nothing. I started to think Leo was right, that I was chasing shadows. The emotional toll of spying on my own wife was immense. I felt disgusted with myself, a constant knot of anxiety in my chest. Was I becoming as bitter and twisted as I feared she was? But then, little things started to emerge. Hushed phone calls that lasted for unusually long periods. A new, expensive-looking piece of jewelry that definitely wasn't from me. Change in her routine, more frequent girls' nights out, that stretched into the late hours. She started taking some of her phone calls in the study, always lowering her voice, her back mostly to the camera. I couldn't make out any words. Just the hushed, secretive tone. It wasn't concrete proof. Not yet. But it fueled the gnawing suspicion that had taken root in my mind. Something was definitely going on. I just had to keep watching. Quiet desperation had turned into a burning need for the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I was on the verge of giving up. The constant surveillance was draining, both mentally and emotionally. Days bled into weeks, and all I had was a collection of hushed phone calls and late nights. My hope dwindled with each uneventful recording. Then came that Tuesday. I was reviewing the footage from the study, a room Sarah rarely used, but had recently started frequenting for her secretive calls. Most of the clips were empty, or showed her simply walking in and out, but this one was different. Sarah was on the phone, pacing. Her back was mostly to the camera, but the angle was just enough to catch her profile. She was holding a stack of papers. They looked like financial documents, perhaps a summary of our assets. I leaned closer to the screen, turning up the volume on my headphones. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but I could hear it. She laughed, a brittle, triumphant sound. "It's all set," she said, a wide, predatory smile on her face. "He's going to be utterly broke. The judge will never know. I just have to play the heartbroken victim. And then our little secret can come out. We can finally be together properly." My blood ran cold. My stomach churned. I rewound the video, my fingers fumbling, and played it again. Every word echoed in my ears, clearer this time, sharper, more damning. Utterly broke. Play the heartbroken victim. Our little secret can come out. We can finally be together properly. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about a divorce. This was a premeditated attack, a calculated scheme to destroy me financially, to make her exit with another man seamless and lucrative. Profound sense of betrayal washed over me, colder and more crushing than any grief I had felt about the end of our marriage. It wasn't an end. It was an assassination. I felt numb, my mind reeling. The woman I had loved, supported, built a life with, was a complete stranger. Conniving, cold-hearted stranger who had been meticulously planning my downfall. The heartbreak was physical, a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone had ripped my heart out and crushed it underfoot. Beneath the pain, a new emotion stirred, a fierce, burning resolve. I wouldn't just sit there and let her do it. She had exposed her hand. She had made a critical mistake. I had proof. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was a tangible, damning piece of evidence that could turn the entire divorce proceedings on their head. I knew what our little secret meant. It meant she had been with someone else, perhaps for a long time. Now, I just had to find out who. The game had changed, and this time, I was ready to play. The discovery of that video changed everything. Constant gnawing anxiety was replaced by a grim determination. I knew what I had to do. The first step was to identify the secret. Sarah was being careful, but her mention of being together properly suggested a long-standing affair, not just a casual fling. I decided to take a bigger risk. I bought a tiny, discreet GPS tracker, the kind meant for pets or luggage. I waited for an opportunity, and late one night while Sarah was asleep, I crept out to her car and attached it to the undercarriage, hidden from plain sight. My hands were shaking, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through me. I was officially crossing a line, but in my mind, she had crossed it first when she plotted my financial ruin. The next few days were excruciating. I monitored the tracker religiously. Sarah went to her usual places: the gym, the mall, her friends' houses. Then, one afternoon, the dot on the map veered off her usual path. It went to a part of town she rarely visited, a swanky area known for its high-end hotels and exclusive restaurants. It stopped at a luxury hotel, the Grand Imperial. My gut screamed. I called Leo, my voice hushed. "She's at the Grand Imperial. I think this is it." Leo's tone was serious now. "Mark, you need visual proof. Can you get inside?" Discreetly. I swallowed hard. "I'll try." I drove to the hotel, my heart hammering against my ribs. I saw Sarah's car in the valet park. I walked into the opulent lobby, trying to look casual, trying to blend in. I managed to book a room on the same floor she was on, giving some vague excuse about a last-minute business. I waited in my room, watching the tracker, listening to the muffled sounds of the hotel. Hours crawled by, then a ping on my phone. The tracker was moving. I peeked out my door, my small high-definition camera clutched in my hand. Sarah emerged from a room down the hall, laughing, her arm linked with a man. He was tall, distinguished, with that same smarmy smile from the video of her confession. He was clearly wealthy, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. They were intimately close, not just friends. They were a couple. This was the secret. My hands shook, but I forced myself to be steady. I pressed record. I captured them walking down the hall, his hand resting on her lower back, her head occasionally leaning on his shoulder. They entered the elevator. I waited a moment, then took the next one down, trying to follow discreetly. In the lobby, they paused. I managed to position myself behind a large potted plant, the camera lens peeking through the leaves. That's when I got the money shot. The moment that would shatter her carefully constructed facade. Sarah, still laughing, squeezed the man's arm. "Almost done," she purred, loud enough for my camera to pick up. "Just a few more weeks of dragging this out, playing the innocent victim. He's such a naive fool. He won't see it coming. And then, darling, we can finally be free. And I'll have enough of his money to set us up nicely. I'm going to squeeze every last drop from him." The man chuckled, kissing her forehead. They walked out, got into a sleek black car, and drove off. I lowered the camera, my body trembling. It was all there. Her admission of guilt, her contempt for me, her true intentions, the other man. The full, cold, brutal truth. I had won. But standing there in that grand lobby, with the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me, I felt no joy. Only a profound, aching emptiness. It was heartbreaking to see the person you loved, the mother of your potential children, so utterly devoid of empathy, so cruel. I had all the proof I needed, and now I just had to wait for the courtroom showdown. Firth. In the courtroom, the silence. After Sarah's recorded confession hung heavy and suffocating. Sarah was pale. Her perfectly styled hair now a tangled mess as she gripped the table. Her lawyer, Mr. Thorne, had recovered from his initial shock and was now on his feet, sputtering objections. Your Honor, this is an outrageous invasion of privacy. This footage was obtained illegally. It's inadmissible, he bellowed, his face red. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, stepped forward, calm and collected. Your Honor, this evidence was obtained due to a clear and present threat of financial fraud and malicious intent against my client. This footage proves a premeditated scheme to defraud Mr. Davies of his assets under false pretenses. It directly refutes Miss Davies' claim of needing spousal support due to hardship, instead showing a calculated effort to enrich herself through deceit. The privacy argument is moot when fraud is at play, and this evidence is vital to reveal the truth. The judge, her face etched with a stony expression, silenced Mr. Thorne with a stern look. Mr. Thorne, while I understand your concerns regarding the manner in which this evidence was acquired, its content is highly relevant to the character and credibility of your client's claims for spousal support. I will allow it into evidence. You may make a motion to have it excluded later, but for now, I need to see the full context. Mr. Davies, please continue. I pressed play again, this time on the full video from the hotel lobby. It showed Sarah and the man, their faces clear, their actions unambiguous. Sarah's mocking tone, her laughter, her explicit words about squeezing every last drop from me, about playing the innocent victim, about their plans to be free and rich. The judge watched intently, her eyes narrowed. The man's identity was also revealed. A wealthy venture capitalist known for his illicit affairs. A detail my lawyer had confirmed after I gave him the license. When the video ended, the courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The judge looked from the tablet to Sarah, her gaze like ice. Miss Davies, she said, her voice slow and deliberate. Is it you in this video? Sarah stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. No, I mean, yes, it's me, but it's taken out of context. He set me up, he's been stalking me, he edited it. Her face was blotchy, tears starting to stream down her cheeks. But they were tears of fury and humiliation, not sorrow. Your Honor, Mr. Henderson interjected smoothly. We have the original file, with irrefutable metadata, timestamps, and continuous footage, proving its authenticity and lack of manipulation. Mr. Davies merely recorded what was happening openly in a public space. The judge slammed her gavel, the sharp crack echoing through the room. Enough. Miss Davies, your behavior as shown in this video is deeply disturbing and directly contradicts the narrative you have presented to this court. It appears to demonstrate not only infidelity, but also a clear intent to defraud your husband. Sarah let out a wail, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. Her lawyer looked defeated, knowing the battle was lost. The air crackled with the undeniable truth. The truth that had been so painful to uncover, but now finally was exposed for all to see. The judge's voice, when she delivered her ruling, was firm and unwavering, leaving no room for doubt. Given the irrefutable evidence presented by Mr. Davies, particularly the video clearly showing Miss Davies' malicious intent, and the premeditated nature of her claims, I am denying her request for spousal support. Furthermore, considering the evidence of potential fraud and perjury, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's office for a full investigation. Sarah shrieked, a raw, primal sound of disbelief and fury. She lunged forward, but her lawyer grabbed her arm, restraining her. Her face was contorted, streaked with tears and snot. utterly devoid of the polished composure she'd maintained for months. She looked less like a wronged wife and more like a cornered animal. "You can't do this!" she screamed, glaring at me, her eyes burning with pure hatred. "You ruined my life." I watched her break down, but I felt no triumph. Only a profound sense of exhaustion. A bone-deep weariness that had settled into my very being. The adrenaline that had fueled me for weeks had evaporated, leaving behind a vast, hollow emptiness. I had won. My financial future was safe. I wouldn't be bankrupt, working myself into an early grave to support her and her lover. But what had I really won? I had won the bitter knowledge that the woman I married, the woman I loved, had been a complete stranger, a calculated manipulator. The years we spent together, the memories, the dreams, they were all tainted now, shadowed by this devastating betrayal. The heartbreaking truth was that the love I had felt, the person I believed she was, had never truly existed. It was an illusion, expertly crafted, and now shattered into a million irreparable pieces. As I walked out of the courtroom, the sounds of Sarah's furious sobs fading behind me. The sunlight outside felt harsh, too bright. I wasn't celebrating. There was no joy, no sense of victory. Just a deep, aching void where my marriage used to be, where my trust used to reside. The weight of the past years, of the lies, the deceit, the slow, agonizing death of our relationship, crushed me. My lawyer shook my hand, congratulating me. "You did good, Mark. You saved yourself." I nodded, managed a weak smile. He was right, technically. I had survived. I would rebuild. I would work. And I would save, and eventually I would find a new life. But the scar would always remain, a constant reminder of the painful lessons learned. Love, I now understood, could be a fragile thing, easily corrupted by greed and malice. The heartbreak wasn't just about losing a wife, but losing the very foundation of my belief in unconditional love and trust. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of a long, arduous journey of healing, learning to trust again, and finding a way to live with the indelible mark of betrayal.